Hello, I'm Mayor Mike Rawlings, and congratulations and thank you for your commitment and service to our great city. I am proud here in 2018 to introduce this ethics video for you. Now, this was produced after a substantial overhaul of our city code of ethics. A lot of people worked very hard on this. I personally made ethics a priority during my administration because ethics is about placing the public interest first. I wanted ethics written into law to serve as a guide for all of our city officials and employees, a guide that would outlast one single administration to ensure that the public's interest is always protected. Because public office is a trust. Ethics is vital to building that public trust in local government. As council members, you are the role models our city staff and other city officials look to for modeling ethical behavior. This is why we want to make sure this training provides you with what you need to know about the City Code of Ethics. The Code of Ethics demands that all city officials and employees be independent, impartial, and responsible only to the people of Dallas, and to do what's best for the city as a whole. The Code of Ethics requires a commitment beyond the individual. It requires a larger commitment to the public good. The Code of Ethics requires us to be truthful, fair, and to treat everyone with equal respect and dignity. Now, the people elected you to serve our city, and I have great confidence that with this Code of Ethics as your guide, you will adhere to the highest ethical standards. So thank you for serving the citizens of Dallas, and thank you for being that ethical standard.
Hello, council members. I'm Larry Casto, the Dallas City Attorney. Today you will receive your ethics training as required by the city's Code of Ethics, which is codified in Chapter 12A of the Dallas City Code. Now keep in mind there are state penalties for violating gift policies, reporting procedures, and ethics rules. And I encourage you to familiarize yourself with these laws. But this training is an overview specifically designed for council members and addresses your obligations under the city's Code of Ethics. If you ever have any questions or seek additional information about anything discussed in this video, I encourage you to contact the City Attorney's Office. Our Code of Ethics is broken up into several sections, and we are going to walk you through them today. First, we will discuss the rules that apply to all city employees and city officials, including council members. Next, we will discuss some of your ethical obligations after leaving office. Now, some of you, after having taken the oath, may never plan on leaving, but if that day comes, well, we have rules for that too. Then we will take a closer look at provisions addressing lobbyists and reporting requirements. Finally, we will discuss the role of the Ethics Advisory Commission. Council members, allow me to introduce you to Tammy Palomino, Chief of the General Counsel Division. She's a big dog in the office. Tammy and I are going to discuss rules affecting present City Council members.
Hello, Larry. Hello, council members. Let's get started. The first rule we're going to discuss is improper economic interests. The basic idea is that a council member shall not take official action on a matter that affects the economic interest of the council member, his or her employer, client, or family member.
Tammy, that sounds really broad. Can we have any fun at City Hall? For example, what if it doesn't affect the council member's personal financial interest, but it affects, let's say, her mom's economic interest, a son's, or family members?
Larry, this rule can apply to prohibit a council member from taking action on a matter affecting a parent, but only if that interest is considered substantial, which is defined in the Code of Ethics and includes, as one example, owning 10% or more of voting stock in a company.
All right, Tammy, you said something about taking official action. What does not take official action mean? Does that mean they are limited to not voting, or does it mean they can't talk or participate in the matter or even discuss it?
Well, it means that council members cannot discuss the matter or vote on it. As soon as a council member knows there's an economic interest in a matter, that council member should let the city secretary know and fill out a disclosure and recusal form. In fact, recusal and disclosure is required if you, as a council member, know that your official action on a matter would violate any of the ethical rules. The next code of ethics rule is a council member cannot unfairly advance a private interest. For example, it would be improper for a council member to direct the streets department to pave a constituent's driveway because that would involve the advancement of private interests by rendering services that are not available to the general public.
Council members, this is important. That section of the Ethics Code also prohibits nepotism. Tammy had to look it up. That means a council member may not appoint to a quasi-judicial board or commission or supervise his own or another council member's close relative. I know that's a mouthful. I am saying that Brother Billy Bob can't come work for you. Council members, City Hall can be brutal. I'm taking smack from someone from rural Arizona. Tammy, what about gifts? What is okay to accept and not accept?
The general rule is that a council member shall not accept, solicit, or agree to accept a gift if it's intended to influence or reward official conduct. The Ethics Code also states that a council member must comply with all city policies, including the gifts policy for city officials, which allows council members to accept nominal gifts, usually under $50, and tickets to city events with limitations.
Tammy, do you have to report it or tell someone about it, or can you just kind of like keep it secret and hope no one finds out?
The gifts only need to be reported if the gift giver is doing or seeking to do business with the city and the value is more than nominal. There are additional reporting rules for gifts that are $250 or more, and related to gifts are donations. Donations to the city are encouraged, but donations that are solicited or given with the intent to influence official conduct are prohibited. The next code of ethics rules state that a city council member shall not improperly access, disclose, or use information that's confidential, including disclosing information related to an executive session.
Council members, remember that disclosing information related to an executive session is already a crime under the Open Meetings Act. Tammy, does this also make it a violation of the city's ethics code?
Larry, yes it does. And that means it would fall under the jurisdiction of the Ethics Advisory Commission, which is where ethics complaints are heard.
Tammy, can you tell us about council members representing others before the city?
That rule states that a city official shall not represent, for compensation, any person, group, or entity before the city, which includes city council, boards and commissions, and city employees. There is an exception for close family members. This section of the code also makes clear that council members' prestige of office should not be used to improperly influence a city decision maker.
Tammy, we often have practicing attorneys who are also members of the city council. Are there rules specific to those people who choose to be an attorney and a politician?
There are. They cannot represent a party whose interest is adverse to the city's. Again, there are exceptions for close family members. In addition, council members may not practice in the city's municipal courts.
Hey Tammy, related to adverse litigation you just talked about, council members often have real jobs outside of their city council duties. How is that regulated by the city's ethics code?
If the outside employment is the council member's primary source of income, then there's no concern. If it is not, it's still okay to accept outside employment as long as it does not impair the council member's independent judgment in fulfilling his or her official duties. However, the Code of Ethics does prohibit a council member from providing services to the person or organization who is requesting an approval, investigation, or determination from the City Council.
Tammy, that was a mouthful, and I didn't quite get it all. Let's say your outside employment is not in conflict with your duties as a council member. Can you explain the restrictions against using city resources for that outside employment?
Absolutely. Public resources cannot be used for a private purpose, which includes not only non-city employment, but campaign purposes. Resources include city equipment like computers, facilities, and personnel. This section of the code also has a provision that prohibits council members from applying for an incentive from the city, unless that incentive is available to the general public.
Tammy, earlier you mentioned that public resources cannot be used for campaign purposes. There's also a specific provision on political activity, right?
Yes, the general rule is that a council member cannot use the prestige of his or her office to endorse a candidate, political party, or political committee. But there are exceptions.
So council members, you can use your full name and title to endorse a proposition ordered by the city. And council members, you can also use the designation honorable, if you believe you indeed are, when endorsing a candidate for public office.
And of course, if the council member only uses her name without the title, that's fine too. Larry, I have a couple of more ethics rules I'd like to review. First, concerning public contracts. Council members shall not have any financial interest in a contract with the city. Such an interest would make the contract voidable by the city manager or the council. This also means, of course, that council members shall not submit a bid or proposal or negotiate a proposed contract with the city.
Tammy, thank you so much. Before we go, is there anything we missed or anything else you'd like us to touch on?
In addition to the rules we discussed today, council members shall not assist or use others to do what they know would violate the code of ethics. And remember, if you observe an ethics violation, you can report it to the auditor's Fraud, Waste, and Abuse hotline. Thank you, council. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you, Tammy. Council members, this brings to a close the first section of our video. Allow me to stress this point. If you are concerned about any of the ethics rules we covered here, to avoid the appearance of impropriety, it is sometimes the best course of action to disclose the potential conflict and recuse yourself. The City Secretary's office can assist with that process. We're going to turn now to Teresa Pham, Assistant City Attorney, who will discuss the rules that apply to former council members.
Hello, council members. My name is Teresa Pham, and ethics does not end when the council member's term ends. There aren't as many rules that apply, but there are still some important things to know. The first rule concerns confidential information, and it must be kept confidential even after you leave office. This includes discussions and information obtained in closed session. Second, a former council member cannot represent any person, group, or entity before City Council for 1 year after leaving office. Also, in litigation adverse to the city, a council member may not represent any person, group, or entity if their interest is adverse to the interest of the city and is in a matter in which the former council member personally participated in prior to their leave of office. Next, there are rules on discretionary contracts, which is a contract that is not required to be competitively bid under state law. There are 5 specific things a former city council member may not do for a period of 1 year after their leave of service. 1. Have a financial interest, direct or indirect, in any discretionary contract with the city. 2. Be financially interested, directly or indirectly, in the sale to the city of any land, materials, supplies, or service made on a discretionary basis. 3. Submit a proposal on their own behalf or on behalf of a business entity to enter into a discretionary contract with the city. 4. Negotiate or enter into a discretionary contract with the city. And 5. Perform work for compensation in connection with the discretionary contract if the former city council member personally participated in the negotiation or awarding of that contract. And as a reminder, these rules do not apply to contracts for personal services. Finally, for a period of 1 year from departure from the city, a former city council member may not register as a lobbyist and may not lobby any city council members, any city department, or board or commission. The next portion of your training concerns provisions relevant to lobbying activities and understanding the obligations lobbyists have under the Code of Ethics. To assist you with that is our City Secretary, Billy Ray Johnson.
Hello, council members. I'm Billy Ray Johnson, Interim City Secretary. The City Secretary's office is on the 5th floor of City Hall, and this is where lobbyists register and file reports. This is also where a property owner with a zoning case would file what we call a non-registrant disclosure form. Council members, please keep in mind that when a lobbyist engages you, the lobbyist is required to immediately identify him or herself and the client. Our office also handles several reports that you must file, including the financial disclosure reports, travel reports in some cases, and certain gift forms. These are separate from the state mandated reports, but we offer assistance on those as well. However, please note that itemized spending reports on the city-funded office holder account are handled by the city manager's office. If you ever have any questions, someone in our office is happy to assist you.
Council members, I am now joined by Chuni Chen, an Assistant City Attorney who advises the Ethics Advisory Commission. Chuni, before we discuss the Ethics Advisory Commission, or EAC for short, we have a couple more points on lobbyists that council members should keep in mind.
Yes, under the lobbyist provisions, a council member's campaign manager or campaign treasurer is not allowed to lobby a city official for 1 year from the date of the election. In addition, a council member and a bidder or proposer on a city contract may not communicate on that bid or proposal from the time it is advertised until the contract is awarded. A violation of the lobbyist provisions is a Class C misdemeanor, but all other provisions of the Code of Ethics are enforced through the Ethics Advisory Commission.
And the EAC is a city commission with 7 members, is that right?
That is correct, and they follow a specific process when they receive a complaint. Complaints are filed and reviewed by the city secretary's office. First, the complaint is reviewed by a preliminary panel of 3 commissioners. If that panel decides there is merit to the complaint, the panel forwards it to the full commission for an evidentiary hearing. After the evidentiary hearing, the EAC will either dismiss the complaint or determine a violation has occurred and recommend a sanction to the City Council, who will ultimately impose the sanction.
You know, we've had trouble shooting this video and had multiple takes. I just got to know before we go, is it a violation of the Ethics Code to have a West Texas accent?
It is not a violation of the code, although some may say so. So please go on, Larry.
Council members, you should also know that the City Attorney's Office can provide an opinion on a proposed action and whether that proposed action would violate the Code of Ethics. If the City Attorney's Office opines that the action does not violate the Code of Ethics, but a council member later gets a complaint filed against him or her for those same actions, then that opinion will protect the council member. It's kind of a shield.
Exactly. Under the Code of Ethics, the EAC cannot find a violation exists if the City Attorney's Office writes an opinion stating otherwise, and the person charged waives attorney-client privilege as to that opinion.
There are several other provisions that the EAC can enforce, but I would like to focus on those in Chapter 15A, Elections of the City Code.
Chapter 15A includes provisions on campaign contributions and city-funded office holder accounts. Chapter 15A provides that city-funded office holder accounts can only be used for a public purpose, meaning it serves the City of Dallas, and it must also help defray the council member's cost of holding office. You can find a test and examples of permissible and impermissible expenses in Chapter 15A. Larry, that's all I have. Thank you very much, and thank you, council members.
Thank you so much, Chuni. We are near the end of our training. Our Ethics Advisory Commission Chair, John Rogers, will complete your training. Thank you, council members, for your service. And remember, if you ever have any questions about our ethics laws, please contact the City Attorney's Office.
Hello, council members. It has been a pleasure and a privilege to serve the City of Dallas, first as an Assistant City Attorney and currently as Chair of the Ethics Advisory Commission. Ethics is very important, and I am proud to have chaired the Ethics Advisory Commission during this rewrite of the Code of Ethics. The code itself is an essential part of an ethical environment because a code of ethics that is clear, detailed, and enforceable puts everyone on notice that City Hall strives to be as ethical as possible. Our Code of Ethics makes clear that City Council members have a duty to the city that is above any other duty, and that duty is the same for other city staff and other city officials. The purpose statement to the Code of Ethics reinforces ideals of impartiality and decision-making that prioritizes the public's interest. These are important values for democratic government at all levels, but especially at the local level. So thank you again, council members, for your service to the city and for setting an example of ethical behavior.